Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the naval hub of the West, home of the United States Pacific Fleet, Pearl Harbor Naval Station was brutally awoken to attack unlike any other. Hi, I'm Tyler. This is Nicole, Ivy, and Ryan. Today is February 10th, 2016, and we're going to talk about something in United States history that will never be forgotten, and those are the attacks on Pearl Harbor. The targeting and unexpected timing of the attacks on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Navy destroyed an enormous amount of naval equipment, while taking the lives of far too many servicemen and citizens, ultimately having long-lasting effects on families of the fallen and United States citizens alike. What angered the Japanese to the point that they wanted to attack the United States? This is a question that I'm going to pertain to. First off, Franklin Roosevelt, the current president at the time, moved the United States Pacific Fleet from San Diego, California to Hawaii in 1940. These actions were made to discourage the Japanese from their movement along that southeast coast. The reason why we placed it there was not for a threat or not to threaten the Japanese, but it was more of a safety net, or some could call it an insurance blanket. This insurance policy, you say, is something that we use so we could protect that Pacific Ocean and address any escalating conflicts between primarily on that southeast coast of Asia. That jumps me into my next point. As Japan continued with their path of destruction, the United States continued to dislike what they were doing. Through multiple failed negotiation attempts with Japan to withdraw troops out of countries, the oil that the United States used to provide to Japan, we decided to seize all of it. The United States made this decision because the Japanese were not complying with what we wanted. With the combination of moving the Pacific Fleet to Hawaii, cutting the oil supplies, and failed negotiations ultimately led to that day we will never forget. Overall, the United States Pacific Fleet was moved to Hawaii by Franklin Roosevelt in 1940. The proximity to Japan ultimately proved as one of the deciding factors that caused the Japanese to do those most brutal attacks on Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Now let me send it over to Ivy, who will explain to you what happened in that morning on this most dreadful day.
Thank you, Tyler. The attack on Pearl Harbor began at 7:55 in the morning and lasted about an hour and 15 minutes. The entire event was over by 9:45 in the morning, and most of the damage was done within 30 minutes of the attack. The first Japanese dive bomber was part of a wave of nearly 200 aircraft, including torpedo planes, bombers, and fighters. The first wave consisted of 183 planes and was launched north of Oahu. 6 of these planes failed to launch. Sounds of alarms, exploding bombs, and gunfire alarmed the men aboard the U.S. ships, prompting them to dress and report to general quarter stations. The second attack wave happened about 45 minutes later. It consisted of 171 planes, 4 of which failed to launch. The second wave was divided into 3 groups. One was directed to attack Kaneohe and the rest Pearl Harbor. The separate sections arrived at the attack point around the same time from different directions. All 8 of the U.S. ships were either sunken or damaged. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor with absolutely no warning, completely surprising the entire United States. First of all, Japan and Hawaii were over 4,000 miles apart. American officials thought that the Japanese would surely attack somewhere closer to them, such as a nearby European colony, Singapore, or Indochina. Not Hawaii. Although the first attack wave was detected by a U.S. private army official, he was told to ignore this because a flight of planes from the U.S. were already expected around this time, so they assumed it was their own planes. The naval facilities at Pearl Harbor were completely undefended, too. The Japanese just knew that the U.S. ships would not be fully manned. They knew Americans would be relaxed, unaware, and not expecting an attack on an early Sunday morning. And this is why Pearl Harbor was such an alluring target to the Japanese. Now that I've told you about the attacks, here's Nicole to tell you about all the soldiers and ships that were lost.
Hi, thanks, Ivy. As she previously talked about, the attack at Pearl Harbor was devastating for both our military and our country. I believe Winston Churchill said it best when he said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." We lost good men that day to a war that we were not yet a part of. As Ivy stated previously, the attack from Japan was a surprise because the declaration of war was not received in Washington until after the first attack had already begun. Due to the surprise attack, we were unable to defend ourselves and we were unable to counterattack. Therefore, we lost 2,400 men and we had an additional 1,100 men injured. And while these attacks affected mostly our military, we also lost 68 civilians on that day. It wasn't just soldiers that we lost in the attacks. We also lost 20 ships, including 8 battleships. Japan's original point of attack was for our battleships. Oh, guys, totally lost.